Hello everybody, what is going on? Welcome to The Last Hit. My name is Munchables and I'm joined once again by Dagda, who will be joining me every episode. But here for episode 2 we have a very special guest joining us, Kelsey Moser of, I was going to say of EG fame. I guess EG isn't the reason that people know who you are, but I've had to write this title down. EG's Competitive and Collegiate Development Lead is joining us on the show. Welcome, first of all, to The Last Hit. Do you want to give everyone a bit of an introduction to who you are, but also to what on earth that long, extensive title can be translated to?
So I'm Kelsey. I've worked in 100 Thieves for the past 2 years as the head academy coach, and basically kind of my title is also head of development and working on projects within that sphere. Now I am basically focusing mostly on how do we make amateur and collegiate better? Are there ways to make programs or projects where we can reach some of the people in that sphere? How do we not just make people who are playing collegiate esports better players, but also better individuals in terms of like preparing them for not everyone is going to become a pro esports player. And then on the competitive side, because that's also in my title, I'm not going to really clarify exactly what I do there, but it's mostly a coach-facing role instead of a player-facing role, right? So I know our LCS team and our amateur team are doing well. Don't give me credit for that, right? So it's more or less it.
Okay, a little bit hush-hush on the competitive side. I can definitely respect that. Obviously, we're also joined by Dagda. How are you doing, mate? How are you feeling off the back of week 4? Because as we record this episode, we are on the Sunday that is the end of week 4 of the LPL.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good. We just had IG versus FPX yesterday, so I can't really complain. That was a banger of a series. It was nice to see FPX kind of wipe the floor with IG as well, when there's so many doubts around them. But yeah, I'm doing good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's definitely it's been an eventful week in the LPL. And Kelsey, I know you watch a lot of LPL. Were there any teams so far that or in fact, you know what? I'll come back to that. I feel like I'm just getting into the conversations that I want to hit in the podcast anyway. So let's start off with everyone's favorite segment. I'm assuming, because it's only episode 2 and I've not had any feedback, but let's just assume it's everyone's favorite segment. It's called Guess the Player, where I'm going to give you guys 3 clues about specific players. There's going to be 3 different players and you can earn yourself some points. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be racking up Dagda's points over the season, and we're going to be racking up guests' points over the season, and whoever wins maybe gets something, and whoever loses maybe gets a forfeit. I don't know. We haven't figured it out yet. Still episode 2. If you can't tell, I'm winging this. So we're going to start with an easy clue and then a medium. Start with a hard clue, then a medium, then an easy clue. So the first player, I'll give you a clue, and then you can each have a guess, and I'll tell you if anyone's correct. This player is known for his farm-heavy style. So very vague first clue.
Good thing we're not in a farming meta, or this would just be,
Well, I don't want to give it away on the first clue.
Yeah, I'm already thinking of 3.
Yeah.
So
okay, do you guys want to give me a stab in the dark? I'll let you each give an answer, and then I'll say what the actual answer is, or I'll say if anyone's correct, so that you have a fair shot each.
Okay. Well, I'll go SOFM to start off with.
Okay, Kelsey.
That was gonna be my guess, but
you can both guess the same.
You can both guess
the same answer.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well,
I'll
you're
guess
both correct.
SOM.
It was SOFM. So forget the other 2 clues that are unnecessary. I guess that reputation really does precede him.
I guess dolling tempo for farm is just really a big calling card there. Nice.
He's like the Sticky Bandits. So second player, I'll just move straight on. First clue: he is famous for his gangplank plays.
Okay, I've got 2.
Yeah.
Is it current playing? Can I ask questions?
You cannot ask questions, I'm afraid. It's just the clue in of itself. But the one overall thing is that they are all LPL players, not necessarily current, but have at least played.
The secret to this, Kelsey, is that Munch doesn't really know any LPL outside of the last like 3 years as well.
You don't know how much. You don't know how much research I put into each of these.
Fair, yeah.
Clues.
Yeah.
All right, so let's have a guess from the first clue, because there's more clues covered as well.
Okay. Do you want to go first, Kelsey?
Yeah, I can go first. I mean, it's okay. If we're talking a recency bias, probably Ben, right?
Okay, Dagda.
To keep it interesting, I'm going to go with Zoom, just to make sure we're on different ones.
All right, well, the answer was Zoom. So there's 2 in a row now that my first clue is way too easy, and I definitely need to make these clues harder.
See, I mean, Zoom was my other one, right? Because it's like, if it's recency bias, it's Ben. Otherwise, it should just be Zoom. But
I spend far too much time on Munch, so I'm just in his head at this stage. I'm living rent free, buddy.
Nice.
So it's 2-1 in points to Dagda. So Kelsey, this third one is your potential redemption. And I think that this first clue should be much harder than the previous first clues anyway. But we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to see.
Nice.
Maybe I just don't know as much as you guys. All right, first clue. His username is technically a mispronunciation that stuck around.
I actually don't know.
I did it. It's not an easy clue. I've managed to. I've cracked it. All right, 5 seconds, and then you guys can take a crack, and then we'll get to the next clue.
Okay.
I have a guess, but
all right, let's hear your guess then, Kelsey. I feel like I need some background music here to build the tension.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude.
Who wants to be a millionaire music?
Yeah, I'm not committed to it. I want to say Doindy.
Okay, Dagda?
I'm gonna say Meteor, not because it was a mispronunciation. I know I'm kind of cheating, but a misspelling.
Okay.
It's kind of.
Well, you think
sideways.
it's spelled meaty E-R?
Oh, they spelled it wrong his first year. He was spelled METOER because they put it down wrong.
Okay, well.
And then they couldn't change it back after that.
You're both incorrect.
Okay.
And I will explain
guess,
the first clue at the end as well, because I think it's really interesting. Okay. Second clue, he's notorious for building Medjais every game.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Now,
You can just guess.
Okay.
You can just guess.
Okay. I know who it is.
Yeah, go for it.
It's Knight, right? Because it's K Knight was what he wanted to be. That's why I understood. So, but everyone called him Knight, so he just stuck with
correct.
Knight.
He originally wanted to.
Okay.
He wanted to be just called Knight, as in NIGHT, but that was taken. So he just added a K to the start of it, so he was going to be K Knight, and then he discovered by pure accident that adding a K to the word Knight is still Knight.
Yeah.
So he got to be Knight.
Could you imagine? You have a 1 in 26 chance and you messed it up. Any other letter and you would have been fine.
Well, no, it ended up being the pronunciation he wanted anyway. Just maybe not quite as edgy as he had wanted it to be. So with that, it's a 2-2 scoreline. So congrats, guys. It's a tie. All right, so that was Guess the Player anyway. So everyone's favorite segment is out of the way.
The second clue is really obvious, right? So the second clue is the first clue. I'm pretty sure both of us would have gotten that right away anyway, so yeah.
Definitely. I 100% knew. Yep, 100%.
Well, the third clue was going to be that he and his friend are both LPL mid laners from Pingxiang, which I think that's for anyone that doesn't know, him and Yagao used to play at a LAN cafe together long before they were both pros. So I'm going to move on. Let's talk about the LPL. Let's talk about the standings to start ourselves off here. And I'll just quickly sort of verbally mention a couple of the things in the standings that I think are exciting. First of all, the RNG are still managing to maintain their lossless streak. So are EDG. I think EDG, though, they've only played TT this week, so I think anyone that expected EDG to lose this week was maybe underestimating them. RNG, however, have had a couple of tester matches now and are still looking good. Guys, I mean, what is your instant reaction to this? Because in my mind, this is kind of ridiculous how good this team is looking. They're looking like one of the best in the LPL pretty unarguably at this point.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun to kind of watch them. Like, when Xiaohu went top lane, I was kind of like, this is going to be a disaster. And then they just gave him every single resource known to man, and it's kind of worked out well. So, like, in draft, they played towards him. In vision, they played towards him. In, lane, they played towards him. Like, everything seems to go towards this man. But to be honest, he's actually been doing a pretty good job. Like, at the beginning, he was a little bit shaky, but bit by bit, his top lane is getting a lot better. And this time, by this stage, I'm actually considering him as a pretty decent top laner.
Best top laner in the league, according to the standings.
Oh yeah.
What are your thoughts? Kelsey?
They have the same point score as
Yes,
EDG,
they are currently
right?
exactly tied. Yeah.
Arguably, Fondra and Shadow are the same exact caliber players. Okay, so
Mathematically speaking.
RNG. So RNG is a funny team because 2017, people probably don't realize this, but they're starting roster with like UZI, Ming. This was the all Chinese roster after their first all Chinese roster after they lost Mata and Looper, and obviously this was the team where they were one of the first orgs to import Korean players. So as soon as the roster came out, people looked at this and they said, okay, this is a budget team. This is not going to do well, right? And then 2017, even though they got UZI back after his stint at OMG, etc. But in 2017 spring, they actually were the first team to really play 1-3-1 well in LPL, potentially LPL history, right? So if you go back and watch those VODs, like they actually taught LPL teams like how to play like 1-4, sideline setup. So like all of the way that we think about LPL now started with like that 2017 RNG with UZI playing like Varus and clearing midway with Q, You wouldn't think about that because the end of the dominant RNG run in 2018, it was really, really tunnel vision done. We're playing Poppy mid, Poppy top, and we're playing like these tank mid, tank top. We're playing Rumble to roam really, really heavily for bot over and over again, give up farm mid. So whenever we talked about RNG, I was just shouting into the void, especially at 2018 Worlds, because they know how to play like this, right? And if you look at Xiaohu, his best champions have been like Syndra, Ryze, etc. historically. So in my head, it was like, this is the RNG, with him switching to top lane, this is the RNG that can be 2017 RNG again. So I didn't want to be too excited about the team, right? When it first came out, but I was like, I think people are underrating this a little bit. I think they can be good. And then I think Xiaohu is just one of the best side laners in the league. We just haven't seen that from him much in the past few years. So I was really excited when I was seeing like, yes, they're actually playing that way. This is really cool. So yeah, that's kind of like my take on it and just a little bit of historical context there.
And you can basically say anything because I'm not going to fact check this, but like coming into the league, if you can remember, whereabouts were RNG in your power rankings in your head?
Yeah. So I posted this in the video with Nelson. I had them like conservatively just making playoffs, right? So like in the top 8. This was before I knew it was like a top 10 going to LPL. So I didn't have them like this high up. I did in 2017. You can actually fact check this and go back. I said that they would be first in their group, and everyone thought it was nuts because I thought Ming was insane player at the time, and he did really well. So,
well, I think the 8th place is kind of the fairly standard power ranking of RNG.
Really? Okay.
I think I put them. I think
most people put them like 11th or something.
I think I put them 10th, but I think most of the casters put them higher than that. I was one of the lower ones.
I had them 10th. Yeah, bang on.
Anyway, we'll move on from RNG. I want to hit a couple of other things in the standings. So for anyone that doesn't know the standings right now, we've got EDG and RNG in first place, FPX now in third, W in fourth, LNG and Top Esports in fifth and sixth, and the rest underneath. I'm not going to go through all 17 teams because that's a lot of teams. I do want to move into your guys' teams of the week in a second, but first off, I just want to ask, are there any teams that aren't going to be your team of the week that just stand out to you right now that you want to say a couple of notes about? I think JDG, for example, in 11th place is incredibly disappointing in my mind. I think that's one of the things that a lot of people are very surprised about at home, that it's the same roster. They didn't lose any players. Like, what went wrong? They even upgraded technically in coaching staff. They got their World's Finals coach, right, in Chashao. But nothing seems to be working for them right now. They're all the way down in 11th place.
Yeah. I watched they put out a video after Worlds, and they were just talking about kind of what their expectations were coming into Worlds, and it seems that there was a lot of issues within the team in trying to figure out how they play, and that's why I think a lot of people were surprised, because when you looked at JDG, you were like, this is the perfect meta for them. Like, they play around Kanavi super well, but whatever seemed to happen between spring kind of leading into summer and then at the end of summer, they just lost complete confidence in their play, and you can see even in the video, I think it's on their YouTube channel, that it just all wasn't quite fitting together. People weren't happy with each other, and I think we're still seeing a symptom of that now coming into spring. And it's funny to see how now, rather than playing towards what is the meta style where they would play towards Kanavi, they're going back towards what we saw at the start of summer, which was, look, if we're not going to be able to play around these farming junglers, let's just go back to early game ganking junglers like Elise, Lee Sin, these things, and we'll just make those work.
So, I have a pretty defined take on this. I remember in spring when people were talking about how well JDG played around jungle, and I said that they don't play that well around it. It's just that no other teams in LPL do, right? Basically, he just power farms on one side of the map, recalls. Like, they don't take advantage of really obvious invade opportunities with prio or anything like that. But he was farming while everyone else was ganking and giving up creeps, right, and falling behind in tempo, so that made it look like, relative to the rest of the pool, that they played really well around jungle. And then so when people said, when other teams started like kind of studying that and kind of realizing, okay, this is how you play towards the end of summer, they just did it better than JDG. So JDG ended up not having like lanes that they pivoted around to take jungle control well or anything along those lines, and they didn't have necessarily like the selfish star player, right? You have Zoom, who I would say is still one of the best top laners, and I can go into detail as to why I really like his style, but I'll spare you all. But he's not going to be the guy who is going to say, yeah, give me counter pick and I'll carry the game. He's going to be the guy that says, okay, our bot lane can't lane whatever. They need very specific picks. I'll just blind, you know? So for me, that's where I see JDG having a lot of issues. I like the idea of going for Sia and Mystic, but so far they just have gut reaction, benched Sia, say we're not doing this again, you know, and they're still charging forward with what they have, trying to make it work.
Fair enough. So, there's time, right? They played 5 series, so maybe for JDG fans at home, that will all resolve itself and they'll be a top team again, but maybe not. We'll have to wait and see. So I'm going to move on to your guys' team of the week and who you guys want to kind of pitch to me. Because I think there's a lot to pick, especially with the way LPL is right now. There is you could pick any of the top like 11 teams, maybe even 12 teams, and really give a good story as to why that's your team of the week. I'm going to go to you first, Dagda. Who's your team of the week? Sell a squad to me.
Okay, I'm going to bounce off the high that was yesterday and just ride it for FPX, because I'm really, really happy with the way FPX look. I'm mostly Nuggery. Like, I'm just a massive Nuggery fanboy after watching him play so many series. Like, this guy, the amount of pressure that he absorbs while still being so safe, just understanding pretty much, able to track the jungler himself, figuring out where he needs to be positioned, how much damage he can get out of terror before he needs to back away. Like, this guy's just so damn good. And it means that when you look at FPX, like the biggest thing for them has been relieving pressure from the bottom side of the map. And when you've got Nuggery up there who just understands perfectly how he needs to play, it's doing so much good for this team. And I actually think that FPX now, the more I see them, the more I'm kind of putting them into the top 2, top 3 position for this split.
I can definitely get behind that mentality. Kelsey, where are you at? Who are you touting this week coming in?
So let me tell you guys about everyone's favorite team. Everyone. Thunder Talk Gaming. Okay?
Oh no.
So,
this isn't the direction I thought this would go. Alright, tell me about Thunder
this
Talk.
team.
Yeah.
This team is so good that they don't need AP to win a game, okay? You know, they can go Camille, Sejuani, Renekton. Enemy team just can't handle it, okay? Obviously, D5, they were running a rookie top laner, but they swapped that guy out. They put an outie. I wanted it to go to 3 games just so that we could see Chalizi, the god, wreck D5's entire top side. Just all 3 of them, 1, 2, 3, conveyor belt. But unlucky for Victory 5, Thunder Talk are just that good. They're so good that he didn't even have the opportunity to prove that he was the best top laner, that he could best all three of Victory 5's top laner men. And of course, like Xiaopeng, I've been fan of this guy forever for absolutely no reason other than that he's one of them. He's very good mechanically, and he does the stupidest stuff. Like, this is the guy who, like, he's the main character in his anime storyline. He just runs into every situation, thinks that he can 1v5. He's like, Rek'Sai is not meta, Rek'Sai is useless. I pick this champ right now. I was really disappointed when he didn't go the patented IE build. I forget what he built, actually, but it was pretty wild. Did he do the Prowlers?
I think
he did the Prowlers.
He was
right?
Prowlers, yeah.
Yeah. Prowlers, Rek'Sai. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get 1 million kills. Doesn't matter, my champion's useless, but I'm going to still be really, really far ahead. I love, and then Twilight. What better mid laner would you want to have on your team, the current mid laner, than Twilight, right? Twilight, his entire champion pool is about dealing with all-in comps. LPL loves all-in comps. Twilight's really happy. He's got Cassio. He's got Victor, Like, you cannot mess up this guy's day. He's just going to ruin your entire draft plan just by himself.
It's just not true, though. It's just not true.
I mean, the Nico worked out well,
Yeah, the Nico is great, too. I love the Nico. Like, I was so happy when he picked that, because it's like, I've been waiting for someone to pick this champ. Yeah, her itemization is terrible right now, but I was waiting for it. And then of course we're not going to talk about the bot lane, the AD position that doesn't exist. Teen is like my favorite. Teen is my favorite rookie coming up from LPL. Everyone was like on that. Him and Captain, actually. The Captain hasn't really played because Twilight is so good, so he obviously can't. But Teen was my favorite rookie coming up from LDL. I love this guy. He's like my next big thing on support for sure. And this is me being 100% honest, even if the rest of it is crazy. But yeah, I really like Thunder Talk, and they've had some really creative and fun drafts. And the reason why they're my team of the week, guys, they already bested Victory 5, okay? They cannot possibly also lose to LGD and E-Star, so they're a very safe bet. They're just going to stop the week. They're going to look great, and they're going to pick up a lot of fans.
Okay,
so,
nice. So you see, you've gone for a different tack than I expected with the pick of the week. Is this week they are going to look good? I like that. That's intelligent. I will say, just disclaimer. Don't buy any stocks in Twyla. Anyone listening? I realise he's not a stock, but this was propaganda. Don't believe the hype. He somehow brought out Renekton though this week, and it looked like his best champion ever. Aside from the one clip of Zillion last year. I
have a rule on my stream where we don't shame rookies, but there's definitely some stuff happening in the top lane that shouldn't have happened that particular game. So yeah,
respectable. Okay, I'm gonna move the conversation on from Thunder Talk to save myself from insulting people on the internet. So let's instead.
That's what it's for. That's the entire thing. The internet's for.
That's true. I want to talk about jungle, and I want to talk about your guys' top 3 junglers. Now, this is my personal favorite segment of the show. And I've had a lot of arguments with listeners because they always say that it's the guess the player segment, but I'm all about the top 3s. So I want you guys to again pitch me. Pitch me is not really the right phrase, but I want to talk through our top 3s here. And I'm curious on how you guys have come to your top 3s and what you guys value and how different your top 3s are as well. So we'll start off. I'll go to each of you and we'll just say the top 3. Don't justify it straight off at the bat, and then we'll go through. We'll go 3rd place, 2nd place, 1st place, and we'll explain, or maybe vice versa, depending. So
Kelsey, just hold on and explaining why Xiaopeng is number 1 until we get to the end.
Yeah, we'll come back to Xiaopeng.
I thought about it.
so Dagda, give us your top 3 without context. Just drop it out.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say I was really struggling to name the top 3.
Or you just couldn't remember their names?
No,
you remember only their play.
What order to put them in. But I'm gonna bite the bullet. I'm not 100% convinced, but number 3 Karsa, number 2 Wei, and number 1 Beishang.
Ooh, Spicy.
Yeah.
All right. And Kelsey, over to you. Who's your top three?
So I considered going that route, okay? But I think ultimately, so actually Carson was very close to being my top three. I ended up going with Tarzan over Carson, and then Wei and Beishang. So my top three are the same.
Damn. All right. Same top twos. So instead, we'll go with number one first, and then we'll move down, since you guys are saying the same thing for number one and two. So Beishang, the hero of WE. I can listen to you guys compliment Beishang all day. So I guess we're gonna just extend the duration of this episode. And this is now the Beishang episode. But Dagda, since you threw your list out first, give me some reasoning. What is it that makes Beishang so much better than the rest of the crowd?
I just love the intelligent early pathing, trying to figure out exactly how he can play towards his team. I think he's been linking up very well with Missing as well in a lot of their games, and that's what I'd love to see, especially just the jungle support duo working as a team. But he's also and this is kind of the same for my number one and number two, but his mid-fight decision-making is really, really good. I love seeing his decision-making in these fights, where he positions, how he can get off the most damage, his thought process around where he needs to be positioned for his team as well, has been really, really good. And then even just in and around objectives, his his decision-making around when to go for objectives, but his smite steals have been amazing. There's that clip where he hops in, I can't remember what team he was playing against, but hops in over the Baron anyway, steals the fight, and then gets a triple kill off it as well. He's just been absolutely impeccable. So yeah, Beishang is my number one, just for pretty much every single thing that I look for in jungle. He's been ticking the boxes.
I'll quickly check. It was I think it was LNG that
yes
steal was against. Kelsey, do you have anything to add onto the Beishang hype train that I'm very much just shoveling coal into the engine of right now?
Honestly, just in terms of the things that I look for in jungle, again, jungle is a really complicated role to rate because of pathing, how the team wants to play. I think the thing about WE that puts them in the top for me is the way that they play around jungle being actually, in my opinion, the way you should, right, in the current meta. And then obviously you need a very strong jungle to execute that. If you're funneling gold into a jungler by playing for lanes that allow him to invade and having your mid laner basically just follow him around like a lost duckling, then you should definitely be able to be a strong enough mechanical player to execute with that gold lead and to make the enemy team feel your gold lead, not just get it, right? Which is kind of the Shun versus Bo dynamic, where I feel like the IG's pathing around Shun is sometimes very smart, but Shun in fights outside of playing Italy is just sometimes tragic, and then you have, whereas Bo, I think, plays fights pretty well, Chilia accepted, and doesn't necessarily, you don't see the same level of intelligence around playing around jungle as FPX, but there are a bunch of reasons for that, not quite. So that's the difference in dynamic. I think Beishang is a really, really good intersection of both. Whereas my number two, to segue, I feel like RNG don't play that correctly around jungle, but Wei is really good in the context of the way they want to play, and he's very good mechanically.
So just if we're going to move on to number two, so I'm just going to let you continue here, Kelsey. So you say that RNG don't play around him. So what is it that he does to set up RNG if they're not playing the same style as WE? What is it that sets him apart in his role?
So he actually gives up a lot of dribble tempo, and then for that, just to kind of explain what I mean by that, because what he does is he just doesn't necessarily reset on time. He's willing to give up his bot side camps to split map, even if he could potentially get a jungle lead, just to walk into the top side jungle and allow Xiaohu to play these types of champions that you don't necessarily think of as hard sideline champions, like Oriana, for example.
AP Malphite.
And so and his presence just forces the enemy jungle out of that side of the lane. Also, in conjunction with Brian, that being their objective, picking in that game the Rise, and then working with that to walk into topside jungle to completely force out all threat of Xiaohu getting collapsed on, except in situations where they're repositioning. And then this is also something they do well, is that they'll use the pressure on side lane from Xiaohu, and then they'll use that vision there to see the enemy team walking on it, and then rotate to the bot side and rotate their control there. And then if Xiaohu dies, like it doesn't really matter because you're trading that for more control. So those are the types of things that I see like them moving around the map well and doing. And then on top of that, like Wei gets a lot of kill gold playing that way, and he also executes very well on his lead.
I feel like kill gold is one of the most underestimated resources in League of Legends, except in the LPL. In the LPL, like a kill is an objective for a lot of teams, so I definitely respect that. So Dagda, do you want to bounce off of that and kind of temper that with what your thoughts were?
Yeah, I agree a lot with what Kelsey said. I love how well he's able to play around his top side of the map, but still always kind of finds ways to make sure that he's staying even or at least coming back. Like, there's been a few moments in games where I see, he's falling behind in tempo, but he'll oftentimes find really clever ways of being able to bring himself back relevant, even if, say, like a gank top didn't work out for them or whatever it might be. So I think he's just a super, super intelligent jungler in both fitting what the team needs and being able to generate his own resources when the team isn't playing fully around him. And then, God, I love this guy in team fights. Like, if every single time he seems to get Lilia, it's just like flashing in, 3-man sleeps, constantly getting these big damages off. Like, he's such a joy to watch. And seeing this guy progress from E-Star, where he is very much gated by, the team as a whole, and now finding this new home in RNG, it really feels like he's actually finding a place where he can grow and can develop and show what he's capable of. And even coming into the split, I had this guy rated way lower down. I was like, look, he's a one-trick pony. He's basically your gank bot lane. Cool, great. That's kind of what I expected from him. To see just what this guy's actually capable of now that he's got the team to play around is a thing of beauty.
Nice. All right, so I'm going to move the conversation on from Wei and from Beishang because I feel like you guys are just spewing compliments and it's nice and everything, but I want to hear the difference of opinion because you've come in with different answers for number 3. So since we kind of snaked on 1 and 2, I'm going to let you start here, Dagda.
Yeah.
Tell me right. I'm going to decide. I'll give context before I do it. I'm going to decide who's the number 3 based on your guys' pitching of your junglers. All right. So Dagda, hit me up with Karsa. Why is this guy the 3rd best jungler in the whole of the LPL?
So the thing I love about Karsa is, again, kind of similar to Wei, where the lanes don't play very much towards him, but he's super intelligent in the way he's able to set his lanes up for success. Oftentimes, like, say if you're playing Gragas or something like that, especially if running Predator, it's nice to get these early recalls, get yourself the boots, and then get back on the map for an early gank. But Karsa will, like, delay recalls and stuff like this, so he can get, like, deep topside vision for 369, so then he's able to play a lot more aggressive in lane, and they're able to set him up for success. And there's just a lot of things like this that I see in Karsa's play, alongside the fact this guy is just stupidly good mechanically, and he's able to set up so many plays, his ganks are always on point. Like, for a guy who we're not going to see like farm up an absolute storm, the goal that he's able to, the style of jungle that he brings to play to the goal of top esports, he's been playing immaculately. And especially when top esports as a whole has been doing pretty poorly, I think Karsa has been one of the shining lights in this team, if not the shining light. And top esports would be a hell of a lot worse if Karsa wasn't playing as good as he is right now.
All right, so Karsa, the backbone of top esports. I like it. Kelsey, over to you. I've forgotten who your 3rd place was. I'm just going to assume it's Xiaopeng, unless told otherwise.
Yeah. You know what? If you want, I can talk more about Xiaopeng. I'm totally down. No, so for me, outside of the top 2, it was really kind of difficult because you see there are a lot of strengths and weaknesses on all of the existing picks. And for me to arrive at the Tarzan conclusion is actually really weird because I feel like when everyone was really high on this guy, he was actually kind of overrated just because it felt like he didn't necessarily understand. That was like the timing when you had to really kind of understand lane tempo or like how like play around your lane resets. Had to like make sure that you're getting lane fire when you're going to objectives, things like this. And then when his lane started to struggle, he didn't do that as well. Not necessarily, even on good timings where his lane would actually need jungle support. So that was a big criticism I levied at him. And I think going into this year, these past 2 years, he hasn't had great teams to really kind of play around or to like play well around him. Like as a jungler in this meta, you need a strong team to play around you. And Bo is an example that I use, but it's like you're never getting mid pry with Donkey most likely, uh, outside of a few picks. So it's really hard to play around a jungler like Bo. And then with Tarzan, I'm looking at LNG, and they have solid players in almost every role, but not like players that will consistently win. Their bot lane, unless they have, I guess I consider Tristana a champion you can choose with. Unless they have that type of situation, they're not spacing well in lane. They're not executing like 2v2s too well. Like just in terms of light, I actually think I want these pretty good. That's just in terms of light. So and then of course like Nakuya is really new, and Icon I don't know. Icon just feel like on the day he can play well, right? So a lot of it will fall down to Tarzan making these decisions, and he gave up like double scuttle in one game so that he can make a gameplay that wasn't there. But you can say that about almost every single jungler in the LPL, that they will have opportunities to do that. But I think in general, like he has a read on the map that makes sense right now, where it's like I see the decisions he's making, and his lanes are kind of letting him down a bit. Uh, so that's kind of where I ended up on Tarzan. I thought about junglers like I even thought about junglers like Hacker and Xiaopeng and like all of these types for this category, just because I love how like mechanically good they are, you know? And they're so much fun to watch in that regard. But it came down to it's like, okay, this is the closest thing to the full package that I'm looking for. And Karsa, I want to see more from top esports before I put him in top three. I was really close though. I think that top esports right now, they're just their first 2 weeks they just kind of didn't seem to care about life,
Yeah.
or they were like shaking up the world's mold. But I don't want to give them that excuse until we get into like week 6, you know. So it just seems unfair to like say that he's one of the best junglers in the first 4 weeks. I also their series today, for example, Kanavi was playing. Was like they really trolled like the bot reset, right, to get Dragon and overstay. And then Kanavi could have lost his entire topside for that, but they weren't really playing for that condition. And then when he did the same thing for Rift Herald, he should have lost his entire bot side for that, but they weren't playing for that condition either. So for me, it was just like the opportunism of being able to identify those situations is what I want to see more from Carson as well. So
Fair enough. All right. Well, I baited you guys because I'm not going to decide because it's above my pay grade to name the top three. I'm going to leave that. Oh, I accidentally just deafened my Discord for a second there. I'm going to leave that to the experts like you guys. But I am going to move the conversation on here. As we are at about, I think, 35 minutes. I'm being very, very conscious of where we're at on the clock because apparently I've got to hit about an hour as accurately as I can. So I want to talk a little bit about the meta right now. And there's 3 different topics that I want to hit, but there are varying levels of controversialness. That's not a word, but we'll just run with it. I'm going to start off with Gnar. Gnar as a pick has been talked about a lot in the League of Legends scene at the minute. Some people love it, some people hate it. I want to get your guys' read on Gnar, both in terms of like as a champion, where he fits in the meta, whether he deserves the amount of priority he's been having recently, whether he deserves the amount of hatred that some people have been throwing his way. What do you guys think about Gnar right now? Dagda, we'll start with you because you've not said out a little bit.
Yeah,
I feel bad for you. Hit me up.
Well, I kind of gave a lot of my stuff last week on this, but I think Gnar has been a champion that can work in niche situations. He works well as a split push kind of solo lane guy, but when you get to team fights, there's just so many supports and CC and everything that can keep him out of the fights that he becomes very difficult to operate in. So certainly if you end up in a like blind pick, no. But I think certainly if you've got like areas where like Jace and these kind of picks are all taken off the board and you've got a jungler that can actually set up for him so he can push towers and start to get chip damage down, then you can look at him as like a pretty decent side laner. But honestly, I think without those scenarios, he doesn't really work. And I just don't think teams have punished him as heavily as he can be in the LPL right now.
Kelsey, what are your opening thoughts? And then I want to dig a little deeper if certain things aren't mentioned already.
Sure. I think for me, Nar is like he's usually safer than let's put it this way. If you have a stronger jungle matchup and can play from mid prow, then Nar will give you a quadrant to invade on because usually he can like play more aggro on the lane or use his autos to like get prio versus really common blinds like Renekton. I don't think he should be blinded, but he gives you the ability to control that side of the map and to accelerate your jungler, which is something that is pretty strong. Also, if you're playing like a weak side pick, a lot of people think of weak side, I think a little bit incorrectly, but you can play weak side where you're pushing the wave and getting the first crash off, and then you're safe for the entire rotation if the jungler is pathing top, right? So that's like one way that he can be safer. I do think he's very punishable if you're able to get that window before he crashes, where you 2v2 because his range is very short early on, and then in terms of like his hop, plus he just is paper, and he's not, and his animation doesn't really necessarily like allow him. His auto animation doesn't really necessarily give him a lot of space or range. It's a little bit slow. Plus, he doesn't have. He's really reliant on like fleet footwork move speed. So if that's not stacked, he's just really screwed. So there's a lot of like weaknesses of Nana that I agree haven't been exploited, but I think in terms of the way that LPL is using him, it's very good. I also think that the Gale Force nerf helped him because if you're thinking about the different ways in which Nar has to set up to play a fight or to get a good engage, Nar is going to basically be looking to go on Mega. The team has to very much coordinate around this animation and him building up that Nar bar and his ability to go in, and then Gale Force just kind of screws over the entire engage. But like Gale Force nerf, I think is pretty big help then. And then since so many teams are just not really thoughtfully choosing where they want to fight, if you're a good Nar team and you're good at setting up that kind of position and you're just like in topside jungle for some reason, then Nar gets these really really good setups with terrain. So that's kind of where I am with him. I don't think he's like an insane pick, but I think he gets a lot of flack when I think he fills a pretty good niche.
Okay. Do you guys think that he's essentially become somewhat of a new version of Renekton in terms of the pick that the LPL really likes that nobody else likes, that is just receives a ton of flame that maybe a lot of it is a little unnecessary?
I don't know if I fully agree with that. I think like we're not the only region that's picking him up, right? He's kind of been played pretty much globally, and as like we've kind of said, he has his moments, like he has his good spots, and I mean, as Kelsey was pointing out, like if you're able to invade on that top side, you get that entire quadrant to yourself as well. So there are moments where he can work very very well. I think it's just with the way things are going. He's found a nice little spot for himself in the current meta. But it's the people that are just going, hey ho, we're gonna lock this in blind, and then we're gonna not be able to actually play around what are the Nar strengths. I think that's where he got a lot of flack. And I think that's where a lot of the anger is coming from.
Okay, so it's more of a we should be mad at the teams for picking him wrong as opposed to mad at Nar for existing. Is the general
pretty
vibe
much.
I'm getting. Okay.
I also think the Renekton blind. Like I'm not the biggest fan of Renekton blind either, but I think it got a lot more flack than it deserved because the amount of sustain that Renekton gets, how well you can play around the splash cooldown in terms of everyone is going for dragons all the time, and you can argue about like okay, teams are panicking, focusing dragons, but if Renekton can get like save his flash for those angles, he's still really effective even against like some of these long range comps. And then he kind of preys on poor like vision control or people not being on the objective when it spawns and things like that. And Nar can fit that same niche for sure in terms of people like being in the way with the pick getting away with certain things. I also think like one thing we didn't touch on is if we're talking strictly about the Renekton versus Nar matchup, Renekton can start D-Shield and then Nar's so useless, right? So in that regard, I actually think Renekton is better, than Nar for the most part. But I also see like how people are playing off of like Renekton's weak level one to use Nar to invade against Renekton. So
Okay, so I think that the key conclusion here is that it's more complex than this is good or bad. It's far more nuanced than that, and
Hmm.
Like
make
most things in League of Legends.
yeah.
Also, I like Renekton. Yeah, that's the other takeaway.
We could talk more about Renekton maybe another time. I don't want to have
Mhm.
him as our meta discussion because I feel like he's a constant in LPL, at least in the time I've been in the LPL. Next one I want to talk about. These ones I'd imagine would be slightly shorter discussions, but I want to bring up Moonstaff, the Moonstone Renewer and Staff of Flame Water combo. Obviously, LS famously has made a video about this, and he's been touting this. It's kind of his new Leandries thing that he's peddling. Are you guys aboard the hype train? Because we've seen it basically not at all in the LPL. I think it's been seen like we've seen Moonstone Renewer. I don't know if we've seen the actual combo of that with the Staff of Flowing Water.
We've seen it on a Lilia, and I can't remember which Lilia it was.
Okay.
I think it's
Was it
Kanavi.
Kanavi?
Kanavi was it?
Okay, yeah.
But the key thing is that like it's not caught on. It's been tried a little bit, but it's not caught on. It's not like exploded into the meta. LEC we saw playing it in the top lane, and you know there's been smatterings of it, but it's not really been this premier number one build. What are your guys' takes on this? Do you think it is good? Do you think it's underrated right now? It should be played more. Do you think that like building things like the Leandries on Lilia, for example, it can bring more value? Where do you guys sit in the debate? Because I think it's something that not many people have discussed very much.
I mean, if we're looking at straight up numbers, I know that when you start adding in all the extra AP and stuff like that, I know the damage is somewhat comparable. I think it's more so about like the style of play that you want to go for. Like if you're going to go for this kind of slow, kind of more, what's the word I'm looking for? Controlled, but war of attrition. If you want to go for this more kind of a war of attrition style, where it's like, cool, let's get a little bit of poke off with a Lilia or an Ivern, and we're kind of taking this slow, we're shielding, we're taking this step by step and methodically working through everything. I think it can work really well. But in the LPL, I don't think we get to see that very often. Obviously, things are way more chaotic. So I think that's why we start to see it a little bit less, and we'll continue to see stuff like Leandri's Anguish and stuff being built because, hey, look, in the straight up fight, this is going to provide more and doesn't require as much setup as I think it is. But honestly, because we haven't seen it a huge amount. I haven't had a huge amount to work off of, so I could be completely off with that. But at least that's from the little sample size that I've seen. That seems to be kind of my takeaway from it.
Fair enough. Kelsey, where do you sit?
So I think that it's definitely underplayed in LPL. I think maybe to an extent it's overplayed in other regions right now, or in English speaking regions, like in the same way that Morello, like never built Morello was overplayed, right? But I think in regards, like I knew that it was like good, and when I saw Kanavi play, because I remember someone asked me about it, it's like yeah, you definitely build this here because he's behind. It's going to be like provide a lot for. I think he had like an Aatrox that was building forward for that game as well. It was just very effective. I think the biggest thing is like you get the proc off from Moonstone for the self-flowing water heal and the bonus movement speed. In addition to the AP, and I actually think it's just really efficient because it's so cheap. You know, you build these 2 item spikes, and then it becomes really impressive for the enemy team to do anything to you. So I actually think it's not just like about a war of attrition style. It's more of about like, okay, we're spiking really hard. They can't come into us anymore, and I think because teams are so focused on like these all-in styles that they're not thinking as well about like how to counter them. I expect to see it more from, like, for example, like teams like TT are building, you know, the Seraphine bots and stuff like that. So I expect to see more stuff like that coming out from like some people. I know it's in there. I know it's being played. I just don't know why specifically the Moon stuff build aren't there. I think that the Moon stuff bot lanes aren't there because my guess is that LPL teams play like really aggressive chaotic scrims, and Seraphine gets dove bot like 5 times. The game ends in 15 minutes, and they decide to pick his shit, right? So I'm assuming that's why we're not seeing the Seraphine bots, or the Moonstaff bot lanes, like the double utility bot lanes. But I think in general, like this item is underutilized on some of the triple champions at least, and then some of the other AP picks as well.
Okay, so, but you think that we're likely to maybe see some more moon staff, and maybe it could become meta if teams cotton on.
Yeah, I think that it's there, right? Like, I think that there are hints of it. People know it exists. It's not that it's just like they aren't paying attention and they have no idea. But I think it's just that it's probably. I think we'll see more of it soon. But I don't think we'll see the bot lanes until they are confronted with like international play and they lose to a Seraphine bot or
Yeah,
something like that. So,
until they lose to it, and then they'll be like, oh, yeah, that thing.
yeah, I mean, LPL is very much like that, right? Like the players are like, oh no, that sucks, right? And a lot of it is just they don't want to play it, so they don't bother.
Yeah.
Um, and then they just rationalize like it's terrible, right? Because they haven't touched it or they tried it once and it sucked.
They don't
So,
want it to be good, so it's not good. And until that reality slaps them in the face, they're quite happy to pretend it's not there. Um,
I remember when TES tried Sona at like the international tournament, and it was clear that they had very little practice on it. It was terrible, but yeah, Sona ball.
and let's be honest, Moonstone, Renoa, Seraphine is basically Sona at that point. So, um,
Yeah.
I want to bring up another item build as our final kind of topic on the meta, unless there are any other topics on the meta you guys want to quickly hit. But Dagda, I know you've already had a bit of a look at this because we looked at this together. I want to talk about Rageblade Senna with the Kraken Slayer coming in. Obviously, for anyone that doesn't know, Senna's Q procs Kraken Slayer now, and also she got a buff to her attack speed scaling. So, I don't want you guys to necessarily go too in depth on the exact numbers if you don't want to go into that, but more like, do you think that this has a place in the meta? Because there's a very clear selection of AD carries that are regularly played right now. Do you think this version of Senna can fit into that? Because this is a much higher damage version of Senna than what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I think we're going to see a lot of it. I think the fact that, so for people who don't know, because you build the Rage Blade, it changes the critical strike chance that you have into pure AD. But Senna's passive has when you get to 100% critical strike chance, the excess goes into lifesteal. But because of the Rage Blade, it changes the passive into you just keep getting a bunch of AD. So it kind of gets a bit nuts. So I think that's why we're seeing her so high at the moment. Plus, obviously being able to take souls very, very quickly with the Rage Blade stack as well is absolutely fantastic. I wasn't sold when I first saw this though, because I was like, that's a lot of attack speed to be building on a champion that I know is 0.3 from 0.2, but it's still not a huge amount, but the value that you get out of it is just insane. So I think we're definitely going to keep seeing a huge amount of this coming out. And it's really interesting to see such a creative build hitting the main stage.
I think that she has no business having the 0.3 attack speed ratio. Like, that was someone wasn't thinking correctly. Like that is disgusting. Like I think like a champion with a kit like Senna should not have that at all. Like no, stop. Like yeah, you can say like it's not that much, but going from 0.2 to 0.3, like the amount of auto rotation she gets, and tops of like on top of being able to just like auto Q auto insta stack like the Kraken, right? Like that's disgusting. Don't let that champion do that. Because she also like stacks souls, right? That she can auto from like 2 screens away. Why does that exist? Why is this in the game? I don't understand. But yeah, I think it's really strong. I know a lot of people are also high because there was a buff to the amount of souls she gets, like the passive souls she gets from like the
and the gold she gets from them as well.
The ones. Yeah. So. Like, I know that a lot of people are on that train, and I think both are good, but if you get to, like, 2 items on Senna with Kraken and Rageblade, I think that just clearly beats the other version of Senna. In my mind, like, I think the Duskblade plus is, like, the normal item people are building on the support Senna with the item that kills wards. I'm so bad at item names, I don't know how you guys... Umbral Blade, there you go. I'm so bad at those item names. I don't know how you guys do it. So good job.
I just murmur until Dagda corrects me.
Yeah.
Like I'll literally talk about the same item for every day, like throughout the week, and then forget the name of the item every day. But anyway, the point is, That I think that if you get to like two items, then the rage by Senna is just ultimately like more damage and more power. So whereas like the other one is going to provide like a lot more sustain, and so it just kind of depends on what your team needs. So obviously we saw like today the Zoe Senna combo versus like a lot of the shorter range all in champs, and I was just like, yes, yes, thank you, TS. This is actually a good draft. I know this is rare for you, but this is so disgusting. So yeah, I think it's really good.
Okay, so yes to the build, yes to her fitting in the meta. Resounding positives. We're gonna see a lot of center apparently. Okay, well,
Yeah.
with that said, let's move into the final segment because I know that we are getting close to running out of time. I know we can run over a little bit, but I want to begin the segment that this was Dagda's idea. So shout outs to my boy Dagda, the rookie report. And no, this is not a segment
like this one.
exclusively about rookie, as much as I would love to talk about rookie all day, every day. I want to talk about the new kids on the block. And I think this week it's only fair that we talk about Shun and Bo, since they went head to head today. They were rivals in the LDL. Both of them extremely hyped up coming into this tournament. And I want to ask you guys, since it's a report, and we're going to treat this like school, and I want to ask you guys to give them a grade each and justify why that grade is coming out and which of these junglers is getting the winning grade. I feel like since the series went 2-0 FPX and Bo got 2 quadra kills, Bo is likely to have a better grade, but I would love to be incorrect on that. So Dagda, I'll let you go first since this was your idea for a segment.
So what's the scale? Are we doing like League of Legends style where it's like F to S? Or are we doing like
No, these are
F to A?
So
It's cool. Okay.
let's just say A+ is the best grade you can give.
Yeah. Okay. Looking at Bo, I'm gonna say kind of like a. I know this is weird because he got like 16 kills, but like an A- kind of idea.
Okay.
I think he did pretty well. But even in when the interview afterwards with Crisp, like Crisp was the one kind of directing. It was like, you've got like a bulldog on a leash, and he's just like Crisp is the one holding onto it, and he's just like pointing wherever the hell Bo needs to go. But as well, I think he got set up very well in the early stages, and it wasn't like crazy smart individual plays from him. It was like rookies Aurelia diving in and giving him a double kill on Olaf so he hits Core Drinker super fast. It was kind of like, oh, well, I mean, that's going to set you up to be pretty damn strong. And then they had those kills on bot side as well. Like, don't get me wrong, he was playing very well, but certainly was kind of a bit of luck and then a bit of Crisp kind of giving him a helping hand as well. So I think still very good from Bo, but I want to see a little bit more from him, especially in his last few series. He's been a little bit. You can see the nerves coming in, like, hey, Rift Arrow's going into the wrong spots and not getting charged on the towers, or he's just not reading where he needs to be, and invade opportunities that he's not taking advantages of. So there's still a more that I want to see, but certainly on the day, Bo did a pretty good job. For Shun...
Hey, so let me go to Kelsey with both first.
Okay,
and then we'll go into Shun. I will say, your grade said A-, but your report itself said, like, C+ or a B. There was mostly
I was kind of
negative.
gonna go P+, but I was like, the dude got like, he set the record for the most kills in the LPL. His team fighting was really good. I was just kind of like, but caveat, could be better. Did spelling mistakes, and there was like, you needed to expand on this point.
Bad use of semicolons. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Kelsey, talk Bo. What's your grade?
Okay, so is it just for this week or
Just his
overall?
performance overall.
Okay. All right. So from that perspective, okay, I have to take it like American schools. So we're giving participation grids, and we have to be really nice to kids. So we have to give them
It's
like
okay. Rob was really nice.
we
to
can't
me as well.
we can't be too critical, right? So we're basically on a scale of everyone gets an A, but we will talk in detail.
That's not how school's meant to work.
About the thing, but it does in kindergarten sometimes, okay? And these guys are arguably like advancing to first grade. So, let's say, we have Bo and Shun. I think like the categories of jungle that we can break down. It's like Bo is good at team fighting and skirmishing. I think his understanding of jungle control is really bad. So that's much needs improvement in terms of like he's going to the wrong. He's my worst thing that I hate when any jungler does it, except for Xiaopeng, because Xiaopeng can do no wrong, is when you pull dragon or top camps up, or you're basically like playing against your like where you get a lead and allowing the enemy jungle to get really really high up on that. And I think Shun capitalized on that against him a lot. In terms of his mechanics, his Talia is like really really questionable. He misunderstood his smite damage. Like with Olaf, you shouldn't be getting outsmited by by basic. I forget who he is against, but it wasn't a champion with an execute on Baron. Um,
I don't remember.
it was in.
It was Kindred and what was the other one? Sorry, keep going. I'll look it up for you.
Yeah. So basically, like that game was like a lot of nerves from him, right? So not as much decisiveness, and that his Talia plays were really sad. In general.
Lillian.
So, but overall, I think he's done very well in fights. Like the way that they played the skirmishes in midsection is good. I think that part of the reason why he's not able to capitalize on some of the mistakes that the enemy jungler makes is just because we see Thornby playing a lot of melee champs like the Renekton, etc., and not getting the ability to walk into jungle. But once he's able to like phase take the poke with sustain on Renekton, that's when you see like him making more of these plays that we saw him do in LPL. So that's where I am on Bo, and I think overall like he should receive a higher grade than Shun, but everyone gets an X. It's cool.
All right then. So let's move on to Shun. So your grade was an A, was it? Ultimately, for Bo. Okay,
Yeah.
so A and a. I guess A minus. We'll just so you're both basically on the same page. Over to Shun then. We'll start with you this time, Kelsey. What's your grade for Shun? Is that like A minus since everyone has to have an A?
It's still an A.
Oh, it's just a straight A, regardless of.
It's still
Copy
an
that.
A. When you've had more than like a handful of games in LPL, I'll give actual grades. But I
Fair
think yeah. So I think for me, like Shun is very smart about the things that Bo is not smart about, which is like the jungle control. He was actually ahead in that series most of the time before the actual fighting happened. And this is very consistent with what I expected from Shun going in, like reviewing his LDL games. He just sometimes like his space is really bad, his third assessment is terrible, he's not going into the fights well. He really only looks insane on Nidalee, which like I think I heard from Nelson, they saw this guy in scrims and they were like, oh my gosh, he's so impressive, but then they started banning Nidalee and they said, oh. Yeah, so I think that's definitely a problem, but he definitely has like kind of a mind for understanding how the map works. And that's really cool. A lot of times, if you're not good mechanically, you can actually just get such a big lead off of that kind of interaction and off of the fact that you have strong laners in top and mid at least. So you can get enough of an XP advantage that even if you don't play fights perfectly, you do well. So I think that's something that he can capitalize and lean into more. So I think there's a chance that, like with his strengths, he ends up being a very, very strong jungle in the context of the LPL, even if he isn't like executing well. But I would tell him, go into practice tool, work on Lilian mechanics, things like that, and then just kind of like play with the dummies, make sure you understand your damage. That will give you more confidence to play further into fights, right? That would be my feedback.
All right, so good overall, but needs time and practice tool. Got it.
Yeah.
Dagda, over to you this parents' evening.
Yeah, I'm kind of just going to add on to talk about the IGFPX series. I felt like he never got really given a chance. Like the double kill going over in game 1 early, and then just having Crisp and Bo live in his jungle the entire time was just never going to be fun. And then in game 2, they just hung him out to dry. It was like, cool, we're not picking a jungler in this first rotation. You're stuck on Kindred. We have 3 losing lanes against Olaf. Good luck. You're gonna have fun this game. Like you saw it. He was just, there was nothing that can happen. The fact he even managed to get that first scuttle for himself and it happened to have the mark was a miracle to begin with. Like that shouldn't have happened. But again, I think he's going to take a lot of flack from that series, but it wasn't his fault. The game and also the draft never really set him up for success. So I felt pretty bad for him watching that series. But I think overall he has been pretty good. Echo what Kelsey said, like IG know that his best champion is Nidalee. I think in 4 or 5 of the games, they've just been like, Nidalee's left open, first pick it. We don't care about the rest of it. It's just get the Nidalee for Shun. So I think if you get him on that, he looks absolutely amazing. Other picks, not as much, but still, I think this guy will have a lot to grow and a lot. I think his high is going to be really interesting to see as he gets used to the LPL. But I think the nicest thing is kind of seeing the way Rookie has started to play around him a little bit more, giving him a little bit of space, actually setting up vision so he has a better idea of where the jungler is and where he can invade. So I think definitely on IG he will do well eventually. It's just that he still needs a little bit of room to get to that spot.
Okay, did you give him a grade?
Are we going? We're going full series as well, because I based my last one on just the IGFPX series. But if we're going for the full thing, I'd say A minus. Kind of basically the same as Bo. I'm kind of copping out here.
Okay, so Kelsey gave them both a solid A. Dagda gave them both a solid A minus. Yeah. But we'll give Rookie an A plus in there for helping Shun out as well. And because we all love Rookie. So with that, that's my last kind of pre-planned segment. Was there any last little things that you guys want to hit on before we close out this episode? Especially you, Kelsey, because Dagda, you'll be here next week. You got plenty of time. But if there are any extra little things or just things for people to look out for over the next week of LPL, now would be your opportunity to just have a word with the audience.
And Thunder Talk, obviously. Just reiterating. The best they're gonna win Worlds probably.
I don't know. I'm kind of regretting giving you this platform.
No, I think some of my obviously I wasn't a big fan. I think Camille said Ronnie Renekton draft, but some of the most creative ideas actually come out of PT. They had that 1 game win versus LG. When they did play the Seraphine into Bocops. It's really unfortunate that Riot released champions basically one after the other that have very similar names, but whatever. And then I think for me, we didn't really talk as much about EDG or FPX, which are both 2 of the top teams. I think that EDG's have had a little bit of issues in terms of underestimating when they can fight. I think they still have a really big tendency towards just straight 5v5ing most of the time. So that's where I see them falling down a peg a bit. I see EDG and RNG as very interesting teams to have at the top because EDG is a lot of talent and they have definitely better fundamentals than TES, though I think I liked a lot of the improvements I saw in TES today. So they have better fundamentals from TES, but them going into face check with, Aphelios trying to walk into Dragon, I think it's Dragon 3, and getting poked down or anything along those lines, just that fight wasn't going to work. I forget which series it was. It was very recent. It was their last game, right? They played TT, yeah. So they should have shown some stumbles against TT, but that shouldn't have been a mistake that they made in that series. So I'm really curious to see how they shape out. Whereas I think RNG is a team that ultimately a lot of their players will probably lose in the hands fight, and they probably won't be the top team. So I'm looking to see how that dynamic plays out. And Edward Gaming, basically that's just my shout out for Edward Gaming. I also expect TES to surge up a bit more here. I still think that they'll finish first. They'll probably win spring, in my opinion.
Yep.
But we saw a lot better things from them today, just in terms of how they were thinking about the map and playing it out. I still feel like Joel walks around and he's I really like how my mini map looks with both pixels have pinks in them, and he's not really thinking thoughtfully about ward placement. And so they're not able to get a lot of control off of that, and then he's also getting caught in random places. But I think Joel, the way they're playing 2v2 is much better with this ball win. So, yeah. That's
I
very cool.
think a lot of people are underestimating TES right now just because of their place on the standings, but they're gonna get real good real quick right now. They just needed a week or two to warm up, I think. Dagda, any final thoughts before we close out the show?
No, I'm good. I mean, I've got a broadcast 7 days a week and podcast now to talk about it. So I've got several platforms to get my thoughts out. So, I'm good. Just massive shout out to Kelsey. Thank you very much for coming on. And it's always amazing to see your input because you've been such an OG for the LPL. It's always great to kind of have like the depth of experience that you bring. And then with all the up-to-date knowledge that you have as well, it's just awesome.
And also on that note, quick shout out to Kelsey's Twitch channel as well. She's been watching a lot of the games of LPL and analyzing them, so definitely go check her out, and on Twitter as well.
She has a new podcast with Nelson that I need to watch, actually.
Yes.
It's a mine to watch. Yeah.
So everyone, do please go and check out Kelsey's stuff. Is there anything pending, Kelsey, that we didn't shout out that you want to quickly shout out?
No, that's great. Thanks. If you head over to my YouTube channel, I would just say that the difference between this podcast and that one is it's more about like explaining to me why LPL does this type podcast compared to like this, which I think is great. Like a good overview of the games, like introducing some concepts to fans, right? So definitely like we coexist. So thanks for shouting it out a bit.
All right, well, with that, we're going to close out episode number 2. I'm looking at my clock. I think we hit just about an hour. I don't know if we went slightly over or under, but I've ticked my boxes all right, and that's all that was asked. With that said, I've been Munchables. I'm joined by Dagda and by Kelsey. Thank you both so much for joining me, and we will see you guys in tomorrow's games of the LPL.